Good evening. Good to see you all here. I almost stayed home. It is cold, cold, cold. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'll be here. I enjoy coming, but it is cold. It is cold, cold. Terry wanted to wash my other coat last night. I'm kind of glad that she did because I had to get that one out. So tonight we're going to continue Revelation chapter 18 tonight. And this is the last chapter leading up to the final, or the second coming of Jesus Christ. So this chapter, last week, if you were with us, we did chapter 17, and chapter 17 was about, what was it about? You tell me. What's going to happen? Yes. What's going to happen where? The religious system. Yeah, it talked about Babylon as a religious system and how it was going to go through the entire tribulation period, but how it was going to impact the people and how it was eventually going to be closed. If you remember, the Antichrist at first is going to participate with this one world religion, this religious system, and kind of support it and uphold it and use it to garner the attraction of all the people. Everybody's going to kind of fall under the spell of it and turn to the Antichrist because of it. And then at the end, though, the Antichrist is going to even turn on that religious system and destroy it and pretty much force everyone to worship him in the end. So that's what chapter 17 was about. Chapter 18 deals with the same time period. It's still dealing with the entire tribulation period, but it talks about the political and economic system that's going to be in place and how that's going to work and how it's ultimately going to be destroyed. Going through this, for me, just studying it, looking at it, and considering what this chapter talks about, I try not to think that we are in these times, but I'll tell you what, just looking at what's going on in the world, it's hard not to see some correlations of what this chapter is talking about and things that are taking place in the world right now that we see. I'm not going to harp on that, but we'll see where those things are and see what your thoughts are on those. So the handout is a little briefer than I've been doing. It's just a few chapters, and it's really just an outline of what the passage is about, but I'll do my best to follow along with it. So the first three verses talk about just the accusation. This is God's accusation on Babylon. Oh, before we do that, last week we talked about that Babylon wasn't really a city. It was just talking more about a religious system. In this chapter, Babylon most likely is speaking of a city, a particular location that the Antichrist is going to set up his headquarters, if you will, where this political and economic center is going to be at. So the first three verses are the accusation. In verse 1, he says, "After these things I saw another angel coming down from heaven." So after these things mean that John had this vision sometime after he had the vision in chapter 17. Both visions cover the same time period. It's just he received these visions. Chapter 18 was after chapter 17. And he saw another angel coming down. If you remember in chapter 17, the angel that came and talked to him about the vision was one of the seven angels with the seven bowls. Well, this is a completely different angel. We don't know who it is, but it's just some other angel. He has great authority. And this is interesting. The earth was illuminated with his glory. No other angel has been described that way, all the angels that we've seen. Now, with everything that this angel says and the way this angel behaves, it's still probably not Jesus. It's not God. This is an angel. But this angel is different than all the other angels that we've seen. Maybe it's Michael or Gabriel or one of those angels. The text doesn't tell us, so that's just pure speculation. So anyway, this angel comes, and it says that he cried mightily with a loud voice. So again, he has great authority. And look what he says. Babylon the Great is fallen, and has become a dwelling place of demons, a prison for every foul spirit, and a cage for every unclean and hated bird. The fact that it says Babylon is fallen, that it repeats it, some people suggest that that means that there's going to be two events that are going to lead to the destruction of Babylon. As we go through the rest of this chapter, I only see one. It just says over and over again that Babylon is going to fall in one day. It's going to go from being the mighty capital of the world to destroyed in one day. So I don't see it as a progression, but like when Jesus said, truly, truly, that kind of, pay attention, this is important. So I think that that's all it is, that it says Babylon is fallen, is fallen. The tense, the Greek tense of those words also mean that it speaks as if something has already happened, but it's going to happen in the future. But that means that it's absolutely certain that it's going to take place. It's kind of like if you're in Jesus Christ, you are in heaven. At the beginning of Ephesians, remember, it said we sit in the heavenly places with Jesus. We're not in heaven right now, but if you have placed your faith in Jesus Christ, it's an absolute certainty that that's where you're going to be. And so Paul can say that we do sit in the heavenly places with Jesus Christ right now, because that's going to happen. So that's what the tense of that means. So Babylon, even though at the time John saw this vision, it probably hadn't fallen yet, it's absolutely certain that it's going to. The way that he describes Babylon, that has become a dwelling place of demons. If the Antichrist is the one who's in charge, doesn't it kind of make sense that all of his little minions are going to be within that city, and that's where they're going to come? The other two phrases where it talks about that it's a prison for every foul spirit and a cage for every unclean and hated bird, which I think that's interesting. Both of those words, and I put this in your handout, are a translation of the Greek word phuleke, which just means a place where prisoners are held. So that's an interesting term to use for the city of Babylon, that it's not really a place that these demons or these evil people go of their own free will. They're prisoners. They're kind of captured there. This system that he's going to set up is going to be one that's going to appeal to people. People are going to buy into it. They're going to accept it. It's going to look lovely. But in reality, it's a prison. It's meant to capture people and to hold them. Do you see anything like that happening today? Maybe it's just me. I don't know, the way I see it, every time the government makes anything where they give you something, it's the government that's providing it, it ensnares you, it traps you. Because at any moment, if they're the ones giving it to you, they could take it away in a heartbeat. More and more I see that happening around the world, especially in this country. Verse 3 describes how this system really gains the world. And this is the last verse of the accusation. It says, "For all the nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication." Let me stop there. Just the wrath of her fornication. What do you think that means? And what does it mean that all the nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication?
I think
is that they've accepted it, whether they agree with it or not. They've accepted it and they've kind of bought into it. They've
Now, they have, the governments of these other countries have done the same thing that the people of this country have done. They've profited from it, but now they can't have to follow that rule.
right. They kind of fell into it. Now it's too late to say, wait a minute, this isn't such a good idea.
Are you talking now spiritual, or are you talking literal?
Literal. This is literal.
Okay, so now we're talking about stuff like internet, government rules.
Yes, we're talking about internet, government rules. This is how the Antichrist is going to set up the political system to trap everybody. I hope that I don't overuse this, but just going back to like when COVID first came out, remember all of a sudden it was wear a mask and stay 6 feet away from each other. Where did that come from? We've never done that before in history. Well, then it was, well, let's just do it. It sounds safe. It sounds like a good idea. Well, once everybody or a majority of the people really started going with that, it was too late to say, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. It was too late to turn back from it. And that's the thing. If you did, oh, you're the crazy person. You're the one that wants to kill everybody. And I'm just using that as an example. What other things does our government do, or what things that you have seen in our culture? We were talking yesterday, our grandson Wade, he's a little bitty dude, right? 7 years old now, and we have booster seats in our cars, so if he comes to visit, we can take him places. And I asked Harry, I said, when does he no longer have to use a booster seat? Do you know what the rules are in North Carolina? 8 years old or 80 pounds. Wait a minute. So does he have to, if he's 9 years old and 75 pounds, does he need to use a booster seat? You know what I mean? And if he's 100 pounds but he's 6 years old, does he have to use a booster? Where did that come from? To me, where did that come from? My mind can't wrap itself around it. But that's the rule. Everybody goes by it, and we just accept it. Nobody even questions it, right? If you do, oh, you don't like children? What, you want your children to die? That's the response that comes back. All I'm saying is, how many things happen like that? Social Security and welfare. You know, great idea. We want everybody to have what they need, right? Great idea. But again, once the government gives it to you, everyone can say, well, you work for Social Security, yes.
But they can still
But they manage it. And they can take it away.
take it away.
They certainly can. Or decide, oh, instead of being 62 to get it, now we're going to make it 72. So, you know, those kinds of things. Going back to the child seat.
All of us here probably have written back and pick up trouble. We were 5, 6 years old.
On the wheel well. Yep.
Well, I remember riding in the back of my daddy's Buick, playing with my little green army men, no seatbelt, playing in the back window, and him slamming on the brakes, and me rolling in the floor, and getting up and starting.
My parents had a station wagon, and me and my sisters, we used to play this game. You had to sit, now I'm going to use this bad term, you can't say this anymore, Indian style, and you couldn't put your hands down, and you had to sit like this. And mom, you know, she's going around the corners at 45 miles an hour, and whoever stayed up the longest won. That was the game we played. Oh my goodness, can you imagine doing that today? You're going to jail if your kids are rolling around in the back of a station wagon. How did we ever survive, right? I know. I've got a picture of me in my car seat in my parents' car. It's a piece of wood, a plank of wood with two hooks that went over the back of the seat. That was it. Mine didn't. No metal around the front. It was just a plank of wood with the two hooks. How did I survive? Anyway. The point I was trying to make is the rules, the regulations that come out with, this is for your benefit. This is going to help you. It's going to protect you, something. And so you'd almost be foolish to say no, right? But that's how it begins. So for all the nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. They've bought into, they've accepted to some degree to where they can now no longer say, wait a minute, we don't want to play anymore. We're out. We're not going to do this.
Europe's like that now. The only one that ever left was England.
Right, the European Union, right? All of a sudden, England's the only, and how long did it take England to get out of it? Took them a long time to go through the process of backing back out of that. Just think of things like NATO or the UN or all of these other, the World Health Organization, all of these things that we're a part of, however you feel about them, to say, if anybody was to say, any of our leaders was to say, okay, we don't want to be in the UN anymore, there would be outrage. It would be like, what do you mean? We got to be a part of that. Why? What's the benefit? Right. But, so that's the kind of thing that this is talking about. It's people, the nations are going to have participated and went along with so much that it's almost to the point they can't back out. It says, the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth have become rich through the abundance of her luxury. Babylon is going to be, I don't know, trying to think of it, like the Emerald City in the Wizard of Oz, right? It's everything there is the best of the best of the best of the best, and everybody else is like peasants. So the people who trade with, who do commerce with Babylon, are going to be very wealthy. The things that they sell, they probably couldn't sell to you and me, because we don't have enough money for it. We could never afford those things. So their wealth comes from trade with Babylon. Whether or not they agree with Babylon or their policies or what they're doing, they're still enticed by it because it's making them wealthy. And that's why they're involved with it. So that's the kind of the accusation. This is what's going on. This is why God is going to judge Babylon. The next two verses, 4 and 5, it's a call for believers to relocate. So let's read the verses, and then we'll go back and look at them. It says, and I heard another voice from heaven, so this is another angel, saying, come out of her, my people, lest you share in her sins, and lest you receive of her plagues, for her sins have reached to heaven, and God has remembered her iniquities. This sounds very much like when the Israelites were in Egypt. And it said, God remembered them and heard the cry of his people. It's not that God forgot about them. He knew they were there. He knew what was going on. But that he remembered them means that it's time for God to act. He's gotten to the point, okay, I'm going to do something about this. Now, there's a couple things with this. By God sending an angel to tell my people, who are my people? Saved people. So these are saved people in Babylon in the last days. So that reassures us that even up until that last moment, people are going to have an opportunity to turn to Jesus Christ and be saved. But here, God sent this angel to tell his people, get out of the city, get out of there, because I'm about to destroy it. Kind of like Sodom and Gomorrah. Yep. Where the angel's telling Lot and his family, get out, because we're going to just, don't look back. We're going to destroy it. So this is God giving his people that opportunity to flee. So again, I think it's comforting that, yes, there are still going to be people being saved, and God still wants to protect them. So he's telling them to get out. So verses 6 to 8 tells us what God is going to do. And again, we'll read through it and then we'll talk about it. It says, render to her just as she rendered to you, and repay her double according to her works. In the cup which she has mix double for her. In the measure that she glorifies herself and lived luxuriously, in this same measure give her torment and sorrow. For she says in her heart, I sit as queen and am no widow, and will not see sorrow. Therefore, her plagues will come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she will be utterly burned with fire, for strong is the Lord God who judges her. What he's saying is, all the things that the Antichrist does, all the things that this political system, this economic system, all the harm that it has brought on other people, which is anybody that's not living in Babylon, God's going to repay her double. So for every, again, we've talked about, the Antichrist is going to hunt down and kill Christians. All of that, God's going to give Babylon double the punishment of what she's done. It talks about that she's lived in luxury. In the measure that she glorified herself and lived luxuriously, in the same manner give her torment and sorrow. For as rich and wealthy as the people in Babylon believe themselves to be, and so much better than the rest of the world, they're going to have that much torment and suffering through this judgment. My mind keeps going to the Hunger Games. Has anybody seen the Hunger Games? So if you haven't, the Hunger Games is about this land where there was a rebellion, and anyway, the capital city put down the rebellion. And so what they did, the capital is where all the money is. Everybody in the capital is wealthy, and all the peasants live in different districts out there, and they provide resources for the capital so they can live in luxury. So their luxury is on the backs of everybody else. That's kind of what this is describing. The Babylon is going to be living in luxury at the expense of all of the people who don't live there. Again, this is where the merchants are trading to Babylon. That's their only customer. They get the resources and take it to Babylon, and that's where they get their wealth. Because of that, God is going to turn that all around. All their wealth and luxurious living, God's going to give them that much suffering and torment because of what they've done. It's going to be a terrible time. And again, in verse 8 there, it talks about, therefore her plagues will come in one day. This isn't going to be a slow death. It's not going to be an ongoing battle that takes months or years. This is going to happen in one day. God's going to destroy them and cause all this suffering.
I think it's interesting how verses 1 through 3 talk about the dwelling place or that Satan kind of draws all of his demons into in that one city, and God allows that to happen because God knows.
right? So all the evil comes to Babylon because that's where they want to hang out, and God allows it because He's gonna destroy it in one day. So get them all together so it's easier to. That's how I see it anyway. God probably doesn't. So the next couple of sections talk about the response. The first one is just verse 9 and 10. Talks about the kings and how they're going to respond to the destruction of Babylon. Okay, so what we've read about up to this point is how they've partnered with or been affiliated with Babylon. Now, this is going to show us after Babylon's destroyed, how do they respond? In verse 9, it says, the kings of the earth who committed fornication and lived luxuriously with her, because they're getting benefits from it too, right? The leaders of all the nations that are bowing down to Babylon and going along with all the things, they're getting some benefit from it, will weep and lament for her when they see the smoke of her burning. What was that? There was a cartoon, little bitty dog and the big dog George. Can't read. Y'all remember that? The little dog would get into trouble and George was always behind him to stick up for him and to keep the bad guys away. No? Anyway. These kings who have partnered with Babylon, they've partnered with them for the benefits. And because Babylon is more powerful than they are. So imagine them now, Babylon's destroyed. What am I going to do? Babylon's been their protection. Babylon's been the source of everything that they have. And now Babylon's gone. So what's going through their minds? They can't, if they messed up, they can't provide what Babylon was providing. They can't do the things that Babylon was doing. So everything, because they totally invested in Babylon, because they totally put their trust in Babylon, and everything, all their support and everything, now that Babylon's gone, they have nothing. They cannot stand on their own. They've got nowhere else to turn to look for help, because everybody was basically divested themselves to support Babylon. So it's a horrible situation for them. Verse 10 says, standing at a distance for fear of her torment. So they're standing away at a distance. They're seeing what's happening, but they're not getting involved. Why? They don't want to get destroyed too. They don't want to be part of the destruction. So they're standing off watching this, not wanting to be involved, but seeing their whole life crumble, saying, alas, alas, that great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour your judgment has come. That quick, it's gone. So that's how the kings are going to respond. The merchants goes into a little bit more detail, a little lengthier, but it's basically the same thing. I'm starting in verse 11. It says, and the merchants of the earth will weep and mourn over her. Why? For no one buys their merchandise anymore. And again, why not? Babylon was the only one that could afford it. Beginning to sound like the Great Depression? Yeah, the stock market crashed, the banks went kaput, and all of a sudden, everybody was broke.
But the stock market, because everybody was
Right.
they were going to get their
Putting their faith in something they weren't sure about. Yep. So it goes into a list of the things, and well, let's read it, and then I just want to hear your thoughts on it. So merchandise of gold and silver, precious stones and pearls, fine linen and purple, silk and scarlet, every kind of citron wood, every kind of object of ivory, every kind of object of most precious wood, bronze, iron, and marble, and cinnamon and incense, fragrant oil and frankincense, wine and oil, fine flour and wheat, cattle and sheep, horses and chariots, and bodies and souls of men. What's the most luxurious thing you would spend money on? You don't have to answer out loud. Just think about it. What's the grandest thing right now that you would spend money on? If all this stuff was available to you, how much of it would you even think about buying? Maybe the gold. But see, and just if you had, $50 billion, these things would probably be on your checklist of things to buy. But if you don't have that, what good is this? What good is a 500-foot yacht if you're worried about where you're going to get your next meal? You know what I mean? You're not even thinking about buying those things. So the one source that these merchants had to buy all these wonderful things that they had is now gone, and nobody else is going to want to buy this, at least not at the value that it had 2 minutes ago. The gold, all of a sudden the gold, instead of being $1,000 an ounce, now it's $5 an ounce because that's all people could really afford to purchase it with. All of a sudden their wealth is gone as well. But it's interesting that it includes, and the bodies and souls of men. How is it that merchants could sell the bodies and souls of men? Slaves? So maybe the physical, I'm going to sell you people. What about the souls, though? If you sold the body, the soul has to go with it? Okay. That's what my mind was running around, the expression of selling your soul, or it's amazing to me to see what people will do for even a little bit of wealth. How much of their just integrity and self-pride they're willing to just throw away for the chance to make a few bucks.
You can take that one step further. What are they away?
Okay.
Come down to, I'll give you this amount of food for your family for a month. You've got to away from them and go to work for this person.
Yeah, and that's a good point. It could even come down to what would you do to feed your family? And for some people, they would be willing to sell their soul to give up all their morality or whatever in order just to feed their children or something like that. So where do you stand on that personally? Where are you going to draw the line? I just use COVID as an example. I don't want to get caught up on a position or anything, but there were people that I have known for years that I thought would never do some of the things that I saw them do during that period. I was blown away by the way that some people did, because I thought that I knew that they would not do certain things, that there's no way they would ever go down that road, and they did. Yeah. And so the vaccine, when that first came out, I decided in my heart that I was not going to get it. Whatever your decision was, great. Then the hospital that I was working in started to hint that it was going to become mandatory. And there was a group formed to resist it. And that first week, there were like 500 people in this group, right? And I said, are y'all really willing to lose your job? I mean, is that how far you're going to go? Because if you're not, don't even act like you're going to resist it, because that's what it has to get to. And in the end, there was about 30 people and they all got fired. Now, I was a contractor. They just didn't renew my contract. But I was prepared for that. And there were things like that I saw, people that I thought would never give in to that kind of mandate, that did. And even stated that they wouldn't at the beginning. And then when it came down to, and that's what it was, well, I got to keep my job. And that's what this is talking about. That's the kind of thing that this chapter is talking about. So these merchants, they've got all these wonderful things that they've been selling, and now they can't anymore. In verse 14 it says, the fruit that your soul longed for has gone from you. The fruit that your soul longed for, what's the fruit that their soul longed for? The money. The income that they were getting is gone. And all the things which are rich and splendid have gone from you, and you shall find them no more at all. All that wonderful stuff, all the shiny, glittery, beautiful things, gone. And they're not going to be around anymore at all. The merchants of these things who became rich by her will stand again, notice, stand at a distance for fear of her torment, weeping and wailing. So the merchants are standing afar off, watching Babylon burn, just thinking, there goes all my income. There goes everything that I've spent the last 7 years building, and it's all gone in that instant. And again in verse 16 they say, alas, alas, that great city that was clothed in fine linen, purple and scarlet, and adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls, for in 1 hour such great riches came to nothing. Every shipmaster, all who traveled by ship, sailors, and as many as had trade on the sea, stood at a distance and cried out when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, what is like this great city? Verse 19 says, they threw dust on their heads and cried out, weeping and wailing and saying, alas, alas, that great city in which all who had ships on the sea became rich by her wealth, for in 1 hour she is made desolate. I just had this thought. I've been like trying to give examples of just the politics in the world, but even bringing this into the church, how much of this same kind of thing is happening in the church? When we just look around the church as a whole, worldwide, right? How much of all of a sudden these little things are starting to creep in? Why? Because of the political pressure from the outside, from the world. The world saying, oh, the LBGP, that community, we have to embrace it. We have to. No, we don't. What we have to do is stand on God's word. But the more and more that churches and the Pope buys into it and accepts it, well, then everybody else has to, right? Right? And if you don't, well, wait a minute, you're a radical. You're a nut. You're one of those religious zealots. You're not like all the other churches, because they're embracing it, they're accepting it. You should too. That's how this kind of system sucks people in, and it makes it almost impossible to get out of. So once you get in it, once you become a part of it, now when the power source is gone, what do? You're kind of left there with no support, with nothing, and that's what this whole system talks about. Verse 20, the first time I read through this, verse 20 really caught me off guard. It says, "Rejoice over her, O heaven, and your holy apostles and prophets, for God has avenged you on her." I guess it, yeah. I guess it kind of got me because I've always looked at that final battle as kind of a sorrowful thing. But here it's saying, rejoice. Praise God. Why? Because it's done. The thing that we've all been hoping for, praying for, I don't know about you. Have you been praying that evil would be stamped out? That we would no longer be under the influence of evil? In 1 hour, it's going to happen. The evil's destroyed. Rejoice. Hallelujah. Praise God. The last few verses, 21 to 24, give a picture of what the actual judgment is going to look like. In verse 21, it says, "Then a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone and threw it into the sea." Now, if you take a big rock and you throw it out in the middle of the ocean, I'm not talking from the shore where, you can only throw it out a few yards, but you go out into the middle of the ocean, you throw a rock in there, what's the chance of that rock ever being discovered by any other human being ever again? It's probably not going to happen. It's gone, right? Goes into the great abyss out there, and we'll never see it again. That is what the picture that we should have of what happens to Babylon. It's not just going to be damaged like what we see cities being destroyed in war. This is going to be completely gone.
I thought about reading those about the city falling and stuff, but standing at a distance. Same thing were happening.
It would.
I mean, you can only get so close to that before you're caught up with what that was. It says her torment only nuclear.
It could be describing a nuclear explosion. It would take out the city in an instant, and everybody else would stay way back because you don't want to get caught in that. That's crazy. When I was down at the church down in Jacksonville, we had a lot of Japanese ladies as part of the church. One of them was a survivor of Hiroshima. And every year the government paid for her to go to Los Angeles and get a physical to make sure that there wasn't anything going on because of but she was there when the bomb went off. That always just fascinated me. But anyway, yes, this could be describing something like that. So this angel throws the great stone into the sea and says, "Thus with violence the great city of Babylon shall be thrown down and shall not be found any more." Great violence. This isn't going to be a gentle, it's not going to be like God's just going to make it disappear. There's going to be destruction. Maybe a bomb. But then, as the next couple verses describes what's not going to be there anymore. So that means this is what Babylon looks like right at the end. This is the way the city just generally operates. "The sound of harpists, musicians, flutists, and trumpeters shall not be heard in you anymore." So there's always music going on. No craftsman of any craft shall be found in you anymore, and the sound of a millstone shall not be heard in you anymore. So there's some kind of industry, there's production, they're doing things. The light of a lamp shall not shine in you anymore, and the voice of bridegroom and bride shall not be heard in you anymore. So they're prospering, they're growing, they're doing well, living nice. For your merchants were the great men of the earth, for by your sorcery all the nations were deceived. All the nations were deceived. That means it was all a lie. It was all on purpose. Now, when it talks about the sorcery there, that is talking about magic. It is talking about evil manipulation, or even in the Old Testament, we're warned not to even be around sorcerers or necromancers. Do you think that means that magic is a bunch of hogwash and doesn't exist? Or that it does exist, and we should be very mindful to not participate in it, not be a part of it. I was working in Pennsylvania, and there was a lady that I worked with. She had a 2-year-old daughter that died, and it really crushed her. Now, she was a Christian. She was very active in her church, but that event really affected her greatly, which I imagine it would me too, right? But a lot of her demeanor and characteristics changed. Anyway, one night at work, she told me that she had gone to a psychic because she wanted to talk to her daughter. And I said, you know what the Bible says about that, right? We're supposed to avoid it. She said, oh, but it's true, because she told me things about my daughter nobody could have ever known. Yeah, it's real. It can happen. We're not supposed to participate in it. So don't think that magic and sorcery and that kind of thing that it's fake. It's real. We're just not supposed to have any part of it. So anyway, by that sorcery, that's how the Antichrist was able to ensnare and entrap the world. It was all deceit. They believed him, and it was all a lie. That's basically it. And then verse 24 kind of gives and in her was found the blood of prophets and saints. His whole purpose, what is Satan's entire purpose? To pull us away from God, to destroy souls of the children of God. Satan knows that every one of us, every human being, was created by God, and that God desperately wants a relationship with each and every one of us. And his sole purpose is to get as many people as he can to doubt, to question, and turn away from God. And because of that, that's the main source of God's wrath on Satan and the Antichrist and on the city of Babylon in the end. So this great economic system, this great political system, when it first comes in, it's going to seem great. It's going to be wonderful. We're all going to benefit so much from it. But in the end, those who are still there and see it will realize that it was all a lie, that they were deceived, and if they could turn back the clock, they never would buy into it. Yes, sir.
In verse 17, it talks about every shipmaster and all the company of sailors. In chapter 16, verse 3, it talks about how the second angel poured out a vial on the sea, and the sea turned blood. Why do they still have shipmakers? Sea is all.
I don't know. So, I was going to say, I mean, I wouldn't want to swim in it, but I imagine you could. It'd be sluggish.
I just thought that was interesting how it seems like they've already turned the sea to blood and all the waterways to blood, streams, mountains even they're talking about.
Right, and also keep this in mind too, David, though, because this chapter 18 is talking about the whole tribulation period. Chapter 16, which is the 7 bowls, those are going to happen in quick succession right at the end. So it is going to have the effect, but up until that point, it's going to be water and the seas are going to be navigable.
Bowls are going to
Right before, and again, I don't know exactly the timing of it, but because of the way that the bowls are talked about, it seems like they're going to come out in very rapid succession of one another. So it's going to be very close to that end time.
once Babylon falls, it
Yeah, that's it. We're done.
can't be after.
Right. Because then the New Jerusalem comes and the millennial reign and the party starts. Yeah. Absolutely. Any other thoughts, comments, questions?
Question. Smart about this. Is this the same Babylon city?
Is it going to be the exact same Babylon in the same location? It's very likely, especially because of the where Babylon was. It was right on the Euphrates, very easy for commerce to get there. That's one of the reasons that it was there. It's kind of the economic, or was the economic center. It's very likely that it is going to be the exact same city, but we don't know that for certain. It's going to be somewhere outside of Israel. Right, because again, going back to the bowl judgments, one of the bowls is going to dry up the Euphrates to allow the kings from the east to come, to be able to make war in Israel, in Armageddon.
No, it's east.
Right. Yep. So chapter 19 next week, I know I say it a lot, one of my favorite chapters in the whole Bible. When Jesus comes back and we're with him. Woohoo! And Babylon falls, and this is the end. This is the second coming of Jesus Christ. I can't wait for it. Looking forward to it. There was something I wanted to mention to you all tonight, and it slipped my mind. I didn't write it down. That's okay. One last shot. Any comments, questions? Anybody want to share anything? Nope. All right. Brother Larry, would you close us in a word of prayer tonight? Amen. I love you all. Have a good night.